Oh, wonderful. Okay, so cameras on you, Tyler. Yeah, we're unmuted, and I just want to thank everyone for bearing with us. Setting up our first ever wax contouring event. Should I pop in there?
Yeah.
Hello, thank you everyone for tuning into our Zoom with UB Pro Society. I'm here with Tyler, and he is our awesome removable technician. If you haven't met him already, we'll work closely in our third and fourth years.
Yeah. Then also there's my coworker Nicole, who's not here this evening, but we're upstairs in room 224. If anybody ever has any questions or they want to come just check out what we do up there, you guys can hang out and watch too.
So this will be recorded for anyone who wants to reference the video and learn how to contour wax for aesthetic gingiva, and very timely for the second year students as we're submitting our final denture projects next week. So without further ado, thank you.
Yeah. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to go through Dr. Pusteri's slideshow on how to do the waxing and festooning, and then each slide we go through, I'm going to explain a little bit, and then I'll just do a hands-on demonstration of that step so that you guys can get the idea in like real life. So we're going to switch it to the slideshow.
I'll do that right now. I am monitoring the Zoom, and if there are any questions, we're going to do a Q&A. Feel free to put in the chat as questions arise.
Did they let us know if they can hear us?
Yeah, we got some thumbs up.
Sweet.
Share screen. Let's see. Hold on. Let's do desktop. Oh, privacy system preferences. Oh, hold on. Oh, wow. The closer to the mic, the clearer. Thanks, Nada. So the mic is a little soft.
Yeah, I have it like in my mouth right now though.
Yeah. I'll put the here we go. So I'll put the computer closer, and I think that'll help out. All right. All right, you should be good to go. We can switch this.
How are you distributing the recording?
It's on Zoom.
On Zoom.
But like the recording?
Oh, that will be done after.
Okay.
We're recording right now. Yeah, it'll be sent through maybe Dr. Pusateri.
Okay.
So we should be good to go. I have the slides pulled up.
Can you
see okay?
Or like scroll down? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Perfect. Awesome. So first, what we're going to do is just go through the slideshow here. What I have prepared is a setup here. At this step, this is pretty much like an interim denture here. What you guys have for your D2 class, you are making base plates and then setting the teeth, so that would be more of a definitive. But we have both dentures here. I could show you either one, but I think this would be the best case because after next year you're going to be doing an interim denture and you're going to be setting teeth directly on the cast. You won't be using a base plate like you are in the pre-clinic. So it's nice to get both aspects here. So hold on just a second. Is it any louder?
Oh, nice.
All right, cool.
Yay, Mark.
So back to the slideshow here. The first
Sorry, you're not using the background.
slide is going to show just kind of how we add the wax on top of the base plate and prepare it before we start our carvings. So there's some contours you want to be aware of and make sure that you get your consistent 2 to 3 millimeter thickness all around. And then once we get our consistent nice thickness everywhere, we're going to smooth it with the torch and just get everything nice and flat and prepared before we do our carvings. And then while we're doing our carvings, I'm not going to continuously keep it up with the flame. I'm just going to do it once at the beginning, do all my carvings, and then do one final torch at the end. Because if you continuously torch it the whole time, you're going to just keep melting away all your details that you carved in there. So let's switch that. Now you guys don't have the same tools that I have up in the lab. So I'm going to show you what I'm using, and then I'm going to show you an alternative that you guys could use to try and get the similar results. The tools that I have are a lot more efficient, kind of. I have like a glass dropper here, and I have a vat of melted wax. So what I'll do is I'll just suck up the wax and I can place it precisely where I want it, as opposed to just putting on wax that's not melted, and then your end result, you're going to have wax that's not melted together, and it's going to kind of peel away like an onion, kind of like as you're doing your carving. So you really want to make sure that your wax is well melted together all the way through, so that you don't get air pockets in there and on that peeling effect. Since you guys don't have this glass dropper right now, what you could use is one of these spoons, and you can just heat up some wax over your Bunsen burner and then place it where you want. But for the demonstration, I'm going to use the glass dropper because it's a lot faster, so we can get through this like quicker. Like I said before, this doesn't have a base plate, so I'm just going to try and eyeball the 2 to 3 millimeters, and then I could use a tool afterwards to probe it and just kind of see where we're at by measuring it with the tool. But with your base plate, it's already a pretty good thickness, about like 1.5 millimeters. So you only want like a thin layer of wax over top of that, not too thick, because it'll be bulky and you'll have a lot of grinding to do at the end. In some places, if your base plate's a little thick, you can just get away with not placing wax over the palette, but we like to make it at least a thin layer on the top to get a nice smooth finish for processing. And then also as you're placing your wax on here, if it's getting like too runny and it's not cooling down fast enough, you can always use your compressed air and blow it on there. The compressed air is a little bit colder than the room temperature, so it'll cool the wax down faster. I'm not going to worry about getting the wax on the teeth too much right now, because we want to cover up that cervical area anyway. So before we do our carving, we'll clean the teeth off, but you want to try and keep the wax away from the occlusion of the teeth. It's just difficult to get it out afterwards. Yeah. Any wax that you leave on the denture teeth will end up being turned into acrylic in the end. So you want to make sure everything's cleaned off really nicely. I'm going to aim for at least 1 millimeter over the necks of the teeth, because we're going to want that peripheral roll when we start our carving. So don't make it too thin. If it's too thick at any point, that's fine, because we can always just carve it away. So that's not a big deal. Also, it's a good idea to make sure that your wax isn't too hot. If it's too hot, it could melt the wax, holding the teeth in place and actually move your teeth. So you want to get it so it's just hot enough to melt the layer of wax below it, but not too hot to move the teeth around.
For the heated wax pens, what's a good temperature?
I don't even use a wax pen.
No.
So, I used to use that just more for fixed work, but never. You can feel free to explore with it though. sometimes people use that to like add the root eminence and the peripheral goal when they're waxing, but the way I'm gonna show you today, you're just gonna carve it in, so. That will be necessary.
And ask what was it that you think?
She was asking about the wax pen that you guys could use for like that tool that electronically heats up. Yeah. But for this demonstration, we won't be using that today.
You waiting until the wax will be cool when you add another layer, or you add it while it's still a little malleable?
So the question was, am I asking or waiting for the wax to cool before I add the next layer? So I'm just waiting for it to get like that nice crust over the top of it. It doesn't have to solidify all the way through, it can still be pretty soft. But if it's still liquidy, it's then just gonna all run away. So just until it gets a nice crust over the top before you add the next layer. For the people on Zoom too, they can ask questions throughout this demonstration as well, and we're gonna try and keep an eye on that.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of great questions and I'm keeping an eye on the chat, so feel free.
Since we're gonna be doing festooning on this denture and not just in smooth gingival carving, I'm gonna build it up just a little bit more, so we have room for the root eminence there. But typically you wouldn't add this much wax on if you weren't going to be festooning it. Typically for interim dentures, we don't go with the festooning, it's just a lot of extra work for a temporary denture. And then also different doctors and faculty have different preferences. Some don't like the festooning at all, and some like the festooning and, you know, request it for every denture, so. It's good to know it, but you gotta really know what your faculty that you're working with preferences. The concern could be that if your festooning and your wax carvings are too deep, then it could be like a place for plaque to start forming and possibly even a food trap. But I would hope that your festooning isn't that crazy to be trying to do that. It should be a pretty smooth, gentle. Also throughout this demonstration, I'll be using a torch that you guys don't actually have. I know you guys have the hand torches, but up in the laboratory, we don't use those. We use an alcohol torch. It's just like a squeeze bottle. It's a little bit more gentle and it like gives me a little bit more control. But from what I understand that you guys aren't allowed to have it in the basement. So sorry about that, but squeeze bottle is definitely the way to go. I'll show you that just in there when I finish adding this wax. So you're also going to notice that there's some voids here in the proximals of the teeth, especially on the lingual side here. Before I add the wax on here, I always like to get a tool pretty hot and just melt all that wax together and seal up those interproximals. If you have any air trapped inside here or any voids that would allow for the plaster to flow in there during the processing, then you'll get plaster bits stuck in the final product, so you wanna make sure everything is sealed up. You can also use a lot of like air bubbles in the plaster when plasting it. So if there's no way for air to get out, then you won't get any bubbles.
Hey, Tyler, we have a question from the audience on Zoom.
So
The question is, are we allowed to use a bit of the red wax, for the denture teeth to come in to add a bit of vascularity since natural gingiva aren't this pink? Will that interfere with the wax to acrylic for the denture processing of the acrylic?
So you can use any wax you want. The red wax is actually a little soft though. So when you go to flame that wax, it's just gonna melt like a puddle super quick. So they do sell base plate waxes that are different colors. We don't have them at the school though. But if you're not doing a try-in with the patient, the shading of wax doesn't really matter because nobody's ever gonna see it, and during
Yeah.
the processing, it's all just gonna get melted away and discarded. So but if you were to be doing a definitive denture and doing a try-in and you really wanted to impress your patient, you could totally use some darker waxes. If you wanted to order them online, I know a bunch of people sell them. I could supply some names later on. I can email them out. But that's a good point, actually. In the future, in the spring, we'll be doing a gingival stain course with post-process dentures. And that way we can get the vascular and contaminants in there.
That's great foreshadowing coming up. That's right. So we have our part 2 of gingival aesthetics coming up in the spring. UV Pros Society will have Nexco stain kits from Ivoclar, and that denture model you just saw on the screen, that will be the goal, aesthetic goal, and we'll learn how to layer the colored composites. So for the audience member who asked the question, if you're interested in playing with colors, that I would definitely keep your eye out for that workshop coming up in the spring
Yeah,
with
so
staining.
the denture is still processed the same way. So this is the denture before the staining. And then what you would do is you do a 1 millimeter cut back of the entire facial side of the denture. And then you would rebuild it back up with the light cure composite in different layers for each color. So you would start off with the root color, which is like a cream color. Then you would do the vascular and the interproximals, and then here in the flange, and then a top layer over top to weed out all the colors. So nice transition. So that's pretty cool. We'll actually have 3 printed dentures for that one, which me and Nicole just started doing this semester. Those are really cool. And then the light cure composite is made of the same light cure material as the dentures, so you know, a lot really nice. Where the traditional acrylic dentures you need to do a lot of dark work and then you have like put process that on power. So again, I'm just melting all the wax into their process, make sure everything's melted together nicely. For the final product, we're gonna want everything to be smooth and not have any bubbles anywhere. Next on the slideshow, and we'll show the next step. I believe the following slide is just the same thing, but the lower, yeah, so you can skip right past that. We'll talk more about that later, but
Keep going.
yeah. Same slide.
Ah,
So as I go ahead and wax up the palette here, I have marked where my post-palate seal ends, so I know I need to extend the wax just over that to allow for a little room to trim after it's processed as well. So about a millimeter or 2 past your post-palate seal. This is probably so boring and slow on Zoom.
no, I think it's great. You're bringing the slides to life, and our class really appreciates that.
as you're applying the melted wax to the palette, you can just turn your model a little bit so it doesn't all flow down into the center of the palette and build up. You'll want it to turn it so you can get it low in the area that you want it to be. Usually I'll break it up into like thirds. I'll do this right side first, and then the left side, and then I'll kind of focus on the center of the palette. Put this onto that. Do you have any other good questions you can answer over? Waiting for those.
Yeah.
How do you know how much wax adds specifically in the palette layer?
Good question.
Good
So,
question.
at this point, since this is technically an interim, there's no base plate, I'm just eyeballing it. But for a definitive where you have your base plate, especially the light cured ones, you just want like a half a millimeter of wax over top of the base plate. So, if you're gonna festoon it, maybe go for a millimeter so you have more carving space. But for the interim, you just gotta eyeball it, and then you can just check it by taking like any sort of tool, pushing it through, and when you pull it out, you can see how deep that was. You want it to be about 2 to 3 millimeters. So
2 to 3.
I just bought shark fin, like the wedges, the wet strips today. Like, like a wedge bar. Well, but I think that, but like, you know, what the process was. It's all like, once I like go through those, it's like, yeah.
For an intervention here, while you're adding the thickness, the wax and the flanges, if you can still see the stone through the wax, it's too thin. So you wanna make sure all of the stone is not showing through. Similarly, if you were doing it, doing a base plate, you wanna make sure it's pretty much not showing through at all.
Yeah, first stuff is really, like, I feel it's like, don't put. You know, DJ?
Yeah.
But the,
When it comes to, when you have a base plate, like, what's the amount that you're putting on top of it? It's gonna be a total of 3 millimeters, so 1, yeah.
2 to 3 millimeters total.
Okay,
So if you have a base plate that's already pretty much like 1.5 millimeters. So I would just like eyeball another millimeter on top of that would be fine. Sometimes you have like the blue base plates, and that's a cool base plate to use,
Thanks.
because if you can't see the blue showing through it anymore. That's when you know you're good enough with the wax. With the pink, it's a little bit harder to tell because the wax is also pink, yeah, so try to use the blue base plate if you can. The color's a good indication.
But basically, yeah, it's perfect. Or basically,
What does a properly luted tooth look like? I know a lot of people, like myself, have issues with the teeth constantly falling out.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for preventing that from happening?
So once you have the tooth exactly where you want it, just get a tool really hot and just kind of go along the borders one side at a time. Don't do the whole thing, because then you might just melt it all out of place. But I would just take a tool and melt one side, let that cool, melt the other side so that the wax is nicely melted into the tooth. You don't want any sort of, I always call them like crumbs. You don't want any crumbs of wax anywhere, because that means the tooth is not stuck in the wax.
Thank you.
So I always just go through, melt the wax to it.
Mm.
Yeah, I think I actually let's go on to this part of the note.
So at this point, I have all the wax that I think I need on there, so I'm just gonna take my torch and smooth everything out before I do my carvings.
Oh.
I think this one.
Yeah. So when yeah, I think I think it was Mark, like, it's when they
Oh, Tyler, question from the audience. The tool you were using to lute the teeth, was that just a plastic?
This is metal. It's kind of like the
Hollenbeck?
It's not exactly a Hollenbeck, but it's the closest thing that you guys would have.
Hollenbeck.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is there any? Is there any efficient way to remove the wax? More efficient than just scraping it off?
So another question that we're getting is if there's a more efficient way to remove wax. The only thing I can say is that you just kind of want to keep your teeth clean as you go through the process so that you don't have so much to clean up. But really the only way to do it is to scrape it off. Just gotta get a tool and scrape it.
Had to be there.
Oh, is that it? Yeah, I was like.
So if you have any wax that ran off like here, try to scrape it nice and smooth before you torch it. Because otherwise you're just gonna have a smooth bump there.
So I have a question. You're using the stropper to add wax.
Yeah.
We do have a dropper. Do you recommend us just putting a piece of rectangular wax right on top of the bumper portion of the teeth and melting it onto the tooth?
So you do or not drop it?
Do not.
So
How would
no,
you do it?
I never recommend putting a sheet of wax on top of there and like putting it down because it'll never melt. Nicely with everything, and it's gonna start peeling away as you start carving. So what I would say to do is either grab a spoon like this and melt some wax and then place it. Or what you can actually do, I told some students to go on Amazon, you can get like a candle warmer for $15 and then some wax, super easy. So if like you and much people wanna like, leave one at the pot or whatever, they'll share, I guess. I'm just gonna pull this wax on real quick before we start carving it. So I hope you guys can see this on the screen. I should have showed you this before I waxed up all the flanges, but on these denture teeth, there's a little ridge here, right at the cervical end of the denture tooth. That's a good indication of where to carve your waxing to. So you're not just guessing as you're doing your scalping here, you're literally following the line on the denture tooth. So we'll start that. As I'm carving my gingival margins, I'm always holding it. I mean, you don't have to do it the same way. This is just what's comfortable for me. I hold it with the inclusion up. And I have a pretty sharp tool here. You don't want to go and gouge out these gingival margins, especially in the papillae. The papillae we'll get to in a few minutes, but you want to be pretty conservative and leave a nice flat space in there. We don't want it bulky. We don't want it to look like they have, you know, gingivitis, no swelling. We want it to be nice and flat and smooth and nowhere for like food or plaque to get stuck into. So I just start at the distal end of this tooth here. And scalloping down the line on that. And then as I go for each tooth, I just scrape the excess wax off. Now you can see that it's pretty bulky here. And I'm just gonna take the tool and like smooth out that sharp line. And then I'll move on to the next.
Tyler, for the denture, we don't want any deep pockets.
Correct.
So how do we know what is too deep versus what is ideal?
It's really just a visual thing. You don't want to. You just really don't want to have any folds. You just want it to be pretty flat at this papilla here. Don't gouge out too.
We don't have that rule to do deep pockets, like. Or like school.
What was the question?
Because we don't have this tool within.
This carving tool?
Yeah, what would you recommend to like carve the?
So again, you guys don't have this tool. This is a tool that I got when I was in lab school. This is called a blue dolphin. You can buy it online if you wanted to spend like $20.
Hollenbach?
But
maybe?
the Hollenbach is pretty similar. The Cold likes to use in school, like I said, the spoon on the one end.
We do have this one.
We do have the wax spatula.
That's what we have. These are
Yeah,
ours.
so you could totally use, I don't know, what's this number?
8?
Number 7.
Yeah.
So you could use the smaller end of number 7 to carve the gingival margins. That'll give you a nice rounder edge as well, so you don't have to really smooth out. I just like to use my blue dolphin because it gives a nice clean carve, so it's not leaving the crumbs of the wax everywhere. It cuts like really nicely through it, so it's pretty sharp. I was told never to heat this up because the more you heat it up, the duller it gets. So I specifically only use this for carving and never heating or melting wax.
So if we're like a number 7, could you heat it up or?
Yeah. So what Nicole did is she actually like modified her number 7 to be a little bit sharper. And she only uses that one for carving. So if you have multiple number 7s, I don't know if you have to return these to the school or not. Yeah, so maybe don't do that. But if you go, you can buy like sets of tools on Amazon for like 10 or 15 bucks, and they have similar ones to the number 7, and you can grind those a little sharper and smaller too. That's pretty much what Nicole did. You're welcome. You want to go back to like one of the, I think it's like the second or third slide. To give a nice demonstration of the height your gingival margins should be. Go,
Oh,
I think, yeah, okay, here. So at the incisal, it's gonna be a little bit longer of a tooth, and the further you go posteriorly, it's gonna shorten, a slow transition. So the centrals, laterals, canines, those are gonna be your highest teeth. Premolars a little bit shorter, and then the molars a little bit shorter. So you'll see that as we go here. And this tool is actually a little bit pointier and sharper than the slideshows recommend. But after I soften up the edges and flame it at the end, it rounds everything out. It's actually quite nice, so it's not going to be too much of a clock track.
Are you heating up the wax at all, as you're carving the gingival margin, or you just go in?
No, so I only heat the wax up at the very beginning after I add the layered wax and smooth everything out. And then I won't heat it up again until I finish carving, because you don't want to keep melting the wax on the teeth. So you want everything just to be cool, get all the carving you want, and then just lightly smooth it out at the end. But I use a cold tool the whole time. If your tool is too hot, then the wax will be too soft, and then you might end up gouging in the papillae. So you want the wax to be pretty firm. That brings up a good point, actually, is the wax that I'm using is a medium wax. So I know the school has hard wax, soft wax, medium wax. Medium is definitely what I recommend. I'm not exactly sure where you guys get your wax from, but there's
I think it's the harder version.
there's a darker, like hot pink wax.
Yep.
I don't ever want to see anyone using that. It's soft wax. It's soft wax, and after you do your carvings and then torch it, it's just way too soft. It just all melts all your details away. So
Yeah.
if you can get your hands on medium wax, definitely recommend that. And I can try and work on getting the appropriate wax for you guys too. It also really depends on like your faculty's preference, like whatever they learned using is what they prefer to use. So a lot of older faculty really like the hard wax. Younger faculty usually use medium wax. It's just easier to work with. But the reason people like to use a hard wax is like to make sure that those teeth are really locked in place and not moving as you do the carvings. But really, as long as you're not putting too much pressure on the teeth, and especially like when you're pulling it, not pressing on the teeth as you're carving, you'll be fine. And also these will be, I mean, your cases will be melted, so you could always check the occlusion as you go, making sure nothing moves as you're doing your carvings.
So I think a big key point that we're learning from Tyler is just we need to be very patient with carving our anatomy. At least I have this tendency to constantly pick up the torch and smooth over every chance I get if I see a rough spot. But what he's saying is that ultimately is a downfall because we're smoothing away our work. So making sure we're patient and having our gingiva, our wax as dried as possible for carving or festooning, that's a key point here.
Yeah, any sort of carving, really you want the wax to be cool to room temperature before you start carving it. Now I'll show you just a second here the gingival margins and the height of each tooth. There is a little discrepancy with the lateral.
It's fine, because I don't know all the details. I know we're doing
Hands-on workshop, we have uncontoured models and.
Also want to point out that your cornrows here should
Yeah.
only be going down to the contact of the teeth. So you don't want them too long, and if you put them too short like this, then again, you're gonna have a gouged out spot for food and plaque to get trapped into. So you want it just to be to the contact right here. And we'll go back and smooth those out, make that a nice smooth transition later on, and kind of like want to ground up a little bit. So this is another.
So the papilla, is that indirectly carved? So you're carving the gingival margins of the,
Yeah, so I'm just scalloping teeth here.
Yeah.
And as a result, you get the papilla in there, and then you just wanna consciously make sure that they're not too long or too short. You don't wanna carve away too much of it. But again, if you do, it's not a big deal, you can always add some.
all right, so we have a supply from B30. This is our wax.
This wax is.
That's the wax we have from B30.
This is Tyler Nicole approved.
It's approved.
That's.
No excuses.
Yeah. But there is, somebody is getting some hot pink wax from somewhere. Garbage,
Not us, not us.
or get rid of them. Terrible, terrible wax.
We're approved.
Okay. So now as I'm transitioning to the other side of the arch here, we want to try and make sure that everything is symmetrical. So looking at it from the facial side here, you want to make sure that your centrals are the same height. We want the laterals the same height, the canines the same height. What I want to point out here is that your centrals are slightly higher than your laterals. And same with the canine. So it kind of dips down to the lateral and then goes back up to the canine before it dips back down to the posteriors. So since the lateral is pretty small, the root's gonna be pretty small, so that's gonna follow through when we do our root eminences. It's gonna be a little bit less dramatic with the lateral, there's gonna be just a pretty small root there. So to get a good end product, it's really all about the prep work. So at that beginning stage where I was adding all that wax, if it's not melted together nicely, your end result will not be what you're gonna see today. Because when we go to shine the wax later on, it's not going to shine if there's air pockets or pinholes anywhere. Which is a result of the wax not being melted together properly.
We have an answer to the hot pink wax from our audience. It's from the seniors lab, that hot pink, so
Shut it down.
shut it down. There you go.
Who answered that question?
I think we'll keep everyone anonymous.
No, I wanna applaud them. Get rid of it. Should have some good music playing. There's always things going on with the lab.
What kind of music do you like to listen to in the fixed lab, removable lab?
We play a bunch of different notes, it really depends on our mood, you know, the weather, what we're feeling that day. I'm a big fan of like. More upbeat. Like remixes and EDM music, it's kind of fun for the lab, it's upbeat. We'd like to play some like Y2K playlists, if it's classic from there. Certainly everything that's inappropriate for work is played.
Sounds like a party.
Exactly. So
I'm not sure if you'll touch on this later in the demo. Are there other absolute mistakes to avoid for first time festooners here? Things that people think look good that
Yeah.
you want to say from
So,
your expertise?
Yeah, I can touch on that right now, actually.
Okay,
After I finish this step, we'll go on to like carving the root eminence. And typically what I see a lot is people just carving straight lines up and down to the root eminences. But that will not be the case here. So what we're gonna end up doing is kind of carving a V, because the root tapers away and it gets smaller as it goes up. So a straight line won't be an accurate representation of what the root actually looks like. Also, a lot of times I'll see the carvings will be straight up and down, but really the roots in the anterior tilt distally, so. We're gonna want to make sure that our roots are going this way, not up and down, as we carve. Does that answer your question?
yeah, thank you.
Now, again, I can always, answer your questions later on too, if anybody ever stops up at the removal lab or just wants to hang out and see what we're doing up there. But unfortunately, I'm not allowed to help anybody with the dentures that you guys are doing D2 year in Chris Food's various class. Since those are graded. I can't help you with those. But this is a good demonstration, to try and do it on your own. But going forward, when you're working in the clinic, you have actual patients that you're making dentures for. I'd be more than happy to give you like a quick little demo of how to set a few teeth for you guys, or help wax up a little section to give you guys a closer look at it. Nicole too, she's always willing to help.
You know how many dentures we make for our requirement here?
As far as requirements, I'm not exactly sure.
Oh, we have a D4.
So I know the answer to that question.
What's the answer?
Like 3 arches of that, and 2 arches.
3 arches
Of like.
of complete dentures and 2 RPDs
Yeah, and 2 different.
and 2 interims.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
So you see here, as a result of carving this gingival margin, we got some crumbs. We're just gonna clean it away as we go. Just try and keep everything nice and clean, so you don't have too much work going on again. If you were to leave those on there, all these little crumbs of wax, when you get to the stage where you're gonna torch it to smooth everything out, that's just gonna bounce all over your teeth. So we're gonna make sure everything is clean as possible as we go. And you really just want to make sure that you're exposing as much of the denture tooth as you can. So going all the way to that line that's indicated on the tooth as a finished line. As we go around to the lingual side here, I tend to switch my carver to a little bit shorter, more blunt carver. And I'll just kind of go and expose maybe like 2 millimeters of the lingual side of that denture tube. Smoothing out everything. You don't want to dig out too much of this abrasure here. Kind of make it like a smooth ramp. One over a time.
That's okay.
As we go over the anterior lingual portion here, we're gonna try and not scoop away. It's quite a transition from the premolar to the canine. You don't want a little divot here, so we're gonna just try and like ramp it downward. And then as we bring it to the lingual and the central, we're kind of just gonna go straight across. You don't really need to scallop this area. There's nothing aesthetic about it, still seeing it, and we don't want any more space for food and black to get trapped into this nice flat transition here. You also want to have this like kind of like a flat platform here. One of the slides indicates it that it's like a good place for the patient to rest their tongue on, so they can get those S's and the S sound pronounced properly.
Right here, the palatal contour.
Yeah, so if you see there, it's about 2 millimeters, and you kind of just bring that from canine to canine. It's kind of just like a flat plane before you dip down into the palate. Often called a shock.
Do you have any advice? Oh, do you have any advice for achieving the ideal lingual contour here? I know at the very end, there's a picture here. And this is what we're trying to achieve. I
Yeah,
remember,
so you kind of just want it to go.
yeah,
You don't want any sort of divots in this upper. So you kind of just kind of ramp it straight down, but you really want to keep in mind that you're just looking for a 2 to 3 millimeter thickness all around. So I would aim for that in the palate and then just kind of transition it up to the tooth. You don't really want too much bulk because you need space for their tongue. So after you carve your gingival margins, you'll just maybe leave like a millimeter of wax there before you try and slip it down into the palate.
so in about 5 minutes, we'll start the hands-on workshop as Tyler is continuing with his demonstration. There's no rush. We'll just have uncontoured dentures available for anyone here who is interested in practicing what is being taught on the screen here. So you can take a seat in B pod, E pod, and H pod at any of the empty benches, and I will come around and pass some of the uncontoured models, and feel free to follow along and practice what's being displayed. Also, the mic's open for any questions.
So at this point, I finished all my gingival carvings. I'm now going to start doing the root eminence while festooning. Again, if you accidentally carve out too much of any of the papillas, you just melt into some wax a little bit. Like we'll be carved again. Welcome back, so that is a cool. And again, I'm not heating up the wax at this point. I get with my carvings. We're gonna use root eminences, and after the root eminences, that's my big torch. You really want to keep the amount of time that you heat up this wax. So usually I start right here between these two circles, and we're not gonna take too much bulk out of this papilla here, but I'm gonna start just maybe at the top third of the tooth here and make a little sulcus here. And again, I'm just kind of making like a V shape because we want it to imitate the look of the two roots away from each other. Sometimes you'll see dentures that have a little bit of a frenum added onto it. You could wax it on at this point, and we won't be doing that. It's typically not added on because later on after the denture process. You do need to remove the frenums and that might just eliminate everything that you wax. And so we're not doing it. It's or like
Because we're not allowed.
Yeah. I don't get it.
So we're not digging too deep here out in the papilla, but once you get to like the height of the gingival margins here, that's where I would start to like scoop down a little bit more. This is the area you really want to focus on. When you get this little sulcus here, that really gives you the look of the final result that you're looking for. So just gonna move on to the lateral now, and then it'll start to make sense. Cleaning it comes away. Now, all these scratch marks that you're gonna be getting as you carve it, at the end, I'll show you like a cool trick to get rid of all that and smooth it out before you torch it. If you just went straight to torching it, you would just have still those lying all over the place. So now that I've done the neighboring V-shaped carving over here, we're just gonna taper off the top of this. You don't want it to just be a straight line up and down to the flange. You want just a slow, gradual fading away of that root as it tapers up. And again, as we're carving these root eminences, we want to remember that the distal or the tip of the root is going to be leaning one distal.
You're gonna widen the V a little bit more on the distal, more to the distal.
Yeah, as you go up towards the end of the flange there, you're gonna make sure it's the V is widening out as you get towards the flange. And then since this is the lateral, it's gonna have a pretty small root eminence, so we're just gonna bring this to an end pretty quick since it's small. And then also if you were doing a lower denture, the anterior portion of those roots are also quite small, so you're not gonna really have to carve too much detail in for the roots of those lower anterior teeth until you get to the canine, which would then be pretty prominent. As I'm carving these V shapes here, a good reference for you guys is if you can start to see your base plate, I wouldn't go any further once you can start to see it.
Then you'll kind of like soften it out, like.
Yeah, so once we are done carving everything, we'll use a brush and smooth out all those scratch marks. And then as you flame it, it'll smooth out even further. And then even actually after it's processed, you guys are gonna be polishing the denture and using the pumice. that's gonna take away a little bit more of the detail. So you really wanna make sure you have a little bit more of a dramatic look when you're in the waxing stage. It's gonna be softened through each step of the process.
And then how far up do you go when you're in the pavilion you're moving to create that V shape?
Into the papilla.
Yeah.
So I usually don't carve any further than the height of the gingival margin here.
Okay.
So I'll carve the deepest point right there at that gingival margin line. And then I'll just kind of taper it into the tube. Without making those too bulky.
Okay.
I could recreate it.
Thanks. This is awesome.
Dentures. I'd rather those than, oh my god, my hair. Are those little? Those are clean.
Kind of something slide and everything.
Reading print.
Yeah.
You're not gonna throw that out.
So those are actually the same denture. It's just that one has like not after this process. It did look just like that at the beginning where you did the cut back. So
No, this one.
it really doesn't take much extra time to do the electric deposit, less than an hour. It's really just the time you're waiting for it to cure that takes the most time.
For reference. Before, after.
Spooky.
Take a video. Alberto.
So you can actually tell on this light cured one,
Oh,
the denture was made out of acrylic, so the prep board that goes into it to make sure that the lid can bond to it properly. It wasn't really applied to the teeth very well. As you can see at these gingival margins in the air proximals, it's not bonded too well. But in the future class, we're gonna be using 3D printed dentures so that bond will be a lot better because it's the same material.
it looks like you're carving in the same direction, like constantly. Is there a
Yeah, so
method
I'm
to
just
that?
gonna try and keep it going in a slightly distal manner, so I don't want it going up and down.
Always slightly distal, okay.
Yeah. That's what I'm aiming for here. And then if I notice that I had a lot of scratch marks in one area, sometimes you can just take your tool and run it sideways just to smooth them out a little bit, because they're too deep. You could also actually use. I don't know if you guys have a tool similar to this.
The cleoid,
Yep, and you can use that to scoop out this area here a little bit. And then where you want it to actually like taper or like narrow up here, you just turn it sideways a little bit and carve it, and you'll still get that same narrow carving, then you can just turn it to get a wider carving here. And that actually gives you a smoother finish anyway. I'm just used to using the blue one.
spring. pretty, right?
Yeah, I feel like I have $200 now about dentures, but then I think it's coming up, you know. Feels good. Yeah. First thing.
Thank you.
Just going back over the central again, Tim was realizing it looks a little too bulky. And again, you really just want to make sure you taper this away, the root away as opposed to towards the plant. You don't want the root extending all the way up here to the plant. Should end about, I don't know, 2/3 of the way up the flange.
That's the canine in particular.
The canine, yeah, because the canine will be the longest and the most prominent root out of all of them. The central's gonna be pretty long too, but you don't really always have a lot of room for the central because just the way that the front of those in there.
So we have a question generally about 3D printed dentures. We touched on it in the very, very beginning, but one question from the audience that we have, how long does it take to 3D print the denture and denture teeth? Are they printed together, separate? I know we have a model up here. And also as a follow-up, can students deliver it to the patient on the same day? Getting to the benefits
So
of
the
3D
first part of the
printing.
question, are they printed together? They're printed separately. So you have a 2-colored shade. We have a wide variety of materials. We have A1, 2, 3, A4, B1. And then you would choose your gingival shade. Right now we only have this like medium pink color, but I know some other companies sell a lighter pink and then a dark pink as well for a more athletic patient. So then after they're bonded or after they're printed, we would just use the denture base material and fill in this void here, sandwich the two together. And while I'm applying even pressure everywhere, I'll use a handheld light cure to cure in like a triangle pattern. I don't know, like a 3-point near the molars, near the central and the molars again, just to make sure it's locked in properly before I'll put it in the curing tank. I just do that to make sure that nothing moves around while it's in the curing tank because there is a vacuum system inside there to leave any air. What was the other part of the question?
Can the 3D printed dentures be delivered to the patient on the same day?
So at the school, that won't be a possibility, but out in private practice, that is certainly a thing now. But as far as in the school, you're gonna have to do your primary impressions, make a custom tray, do your secondary impressions, mount it, scan all of that to the computer. You'll need a faculty's help or a minor Nicole's help designing the denture on the computer. And then printing the denture takes for the teeth probably about 45 minutes. For the denture base, it's a little bit larger, so it takes about 2 hours to print the base. Then just the process of like bonding them together, grinding the supports off, smoothing everything out, and then glazing it at the end probably takes like another 45 minutes or so. So while it could be done the same day, it would be the only patient you saw the whole day in short.
And as a follow-up to this, another great question we have, does it matter for insurance purposes whether the denture is digital or lab processed?
So at the school, we charge just a flat rate no matter how the denture is processed. But out in private practice, each type of processing would come with a different cost for the denture. So the printed dentures are actually quite cost effective because you just buy the bottle of material and you can print like say 30 or 40 dentures with that bottle of material that costs $300. Where the milled dentures, which are used for definitive restorations, are much more expensive. They're probably around $200 a puck and needed a puck for the teeth and you need a puck for the base. So it's quite a bit more expensive for the milling, and honestly, you waste a lot of material with the milling because it's this a huge puck. And they're just grinding away and wasting all the material that is in the denture. Where with the printed, you're only using the material that is making the denture. The rest of the material remains in the reservoir for future prints. So at this time, we're only doing printed dentures for inner runs because the strength of it just isn't comparable to the milled dentures yet. But as new products develop, they are coming out with more durable printing materials that could probably be used as the printed restorations in the near future. I know that there are a few already. I'm just not sure if they're FDA approved yet. But that would definitely be my recommendation.
Yeah, definitely in our lifetime, I'm sure we'll see the rise of materials suited for 3D printed dentures.
Even like the equipment, like the mills are much more expensive, where the printers are much more cost effective too. So the equipment and then the actual product that you're using is just in general, the printing is more cost effective. And a little bit faster too.
Thanks again, Tyler, and to the audience. We are at 7:43. Our hands-on workshop has started, and there is still space for anyone interested in stopping by. We still have some extra models that are uncontoured and ready for anyone who's interested in practicing. We'll also have Tyler available here, finishing up the demo, available for in-person questions. As a reminder, this Zoom is recorded, and so you'll be able to reference this if you have to tap out the Zoom or the meeting at any point. We will figure out a way to get this Zoom recording to you. And thank you again so far for tagging along. We're just going to finish up our demo. Again, feel free if you have any questions, keeping an eye on the chat.
So again, the canine is the most prominent root that you're gonna see here. So as we go more distal, we're gonna start to shorten those roots and make them a little bit less dramatic.
Would you recommend using, there it is, okay. So this is just any old dry toothbrush.
Yeah.
We want to avoid, again, the heat, if we could help it, just to keep everything nice and dry for carving.
Hard wax though would be done at room temperature.
At room temp. Yeah, feel free, participants in the workshop to come up, and if you have any questions, feel free to show your models and we can workshop them over the Zoom.
I did this one. It is take one.
So
To add more.
we have a question for Tyler, one of our participants. Tyler can take a look and he'll best answer.
I just started doing this one. Do you think I'm going to like?
Yeah, you're definitely gonna have to add some more wax. I would probably cover up the tooth a little bit. Just past that CDJ, maybe to like the top 1/3 of the tooth. Before you start carving. So you see how you have like kind of this divot here? I would fill it in a little bit more so it's a little flatter.
And what is the instrument that you're using?
This is called a blue dolphin. You guys don't actually have this in your kit.
Yeah.
But you can use the Holland bag. It's a pretty similar tool. See this area here too. You're gonna want to get the tool pretty hot and just melt all this together. And I can even see like there's a air pocket in here. Just melt that all together before you start your carvings. Also, like these light areas, even though you can't see any air in there, the light areas is a bit of another air trap inside there. So if you just melt it together, it'll release the air. Then you'll get a better quantity.
Always. This is what it gets.
Lorraine.
You covered, okay, you covered it for me. You're a boss. Like, I'm not understanding this. I'm trying to hear that here because I did it and it was so gross.
Every time I want to do it right now, like.
See what he's.
So what I'll do is I'll just start
Look it over.
near like the line margin here and just kind of like dig straight down at first. Maybe just like a millimeter or so. And then I'll start to like taper it out. Whatever you have. Sorry.
No,
Yeah, so I'm gonna do it a little bit deeper at first because then you're gonna be flaming it after and it's gonna sort it all out. So it won't be a dramatic thing at the end. And then again, after you like process it and you're gonna polish it, and during the polishing phase, it's gonna and then I'm just gonna use like gingival margins a little bit. This is probably about the same. No, these are all the same. It's not the wax I got. And then this is the wax that you guys had down here. It's pretty, mine might be a little bit softer. So. Since this wax hasn't been heated in quite some time, because these were made like a year ago, you could even like heat it up right now, just like give it a quick torch and like let it pull down. Just like with your hand on torch, just like soften it up a little bit. It's pretty burnt. And then this pillow here is a bit of a bulky, so it's
No, I'm saying. What I sent you.
but this soup wasn't really good.
There wasn't, I know, the inside are like it's coming out.
Yeah, so it's so just like, yeah, so this front will have like a longer part in there. And then wait for the whole first part. There'll be lots in there.
No, I gave refund for he gave Gary Wilson and your phone watch.
It's still recording.
I think you're like in, oh, it's like something with strap.
I think honestly, everyone. And so whatever you present. Yeah. And I think that would be. If you invite.
Yeah, so I was just melting the wax along there and then I was just trying to expose more of that too. It was waxed a little bit past the cervical too, so just exposing as much as possible to make it complete. So just, I guess, just carve out those V shapes and keep them out as much as I can.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
Do you need anything?
Oh, bit, yeah.
Can't wait to see how to make this.
Oh, yeah. When we get to that, I can tell everyone how we did it. And even make some people decide by the way.
No, I did. When they had one people.
I got a fan out there.
Where did you put it? Yeah, thanks so much, Tyler. We appreciate you.
He has an amazing student. You should look at some of the other schools. It's not fun.
We're still recording. I'm just gonna go check some of the line for the event.
I show you what I'm wrong. Totally. So I try to smooth it out. Some of them are a little rough, but I do have, there's that one hole over here. If that were to happen, what's the best way to like fix that?
I would just
fill it in again and then
Yeah, see if it's all. Just put it on top.
And I noticed that, I mean, when I was working with this one, the wax, I feel like the wax was added on layers because I would try to carve and then whole chunks would just come off.
Yeah, if that happens, I would say like it's cool. Pretty hot and just like run it through it, just try and melt it together. Especially like here, the feel is just like, oh, just wax it, so just melt it all together. And we'll fall tips, please something in.
This guy.
what's the name of what you're using right now, that tool? It looks like a long clear disc right there. It's kind of like
It's called a blue dolphin.
blue dolphin.
If they're like, there we go, there's some body.
You only use that instrument when you're doing this?
Yeah, primarily.
You also use it to create the like the V's,
Yeah, so there's a sharper, longer, pointier side that I use for like the gingival margins, and then I use the duller, shorter side for the root carvings. So again, you really just want to focus in on this space here, right at the height of the gingival margins, and that's where the deepest one should be.
the deepest part is that.
Yeah, and then just taper it away.
So you would say you really want to go deep in that one area and kind of taper it back out as you go more
So as you go closer into the papilla, I like to just make sure that it's not too bulky, kind of just like flush with the tooth pretty much.
Okay.
So as I'm doing those carvings, I'll just keep an eye on it and see if I can move anything, but I'm not really carving down into it because you don't want to really go into the
And when you're carving with these, you're creating like those root contours. Are you smoothing or removing any wax on top of those areas as well? Or are you leaving those and then when you smooth it out with the hand on torch?
You could really do it either way. You could take the tool and like turn on its side to kind of break down those ridges.
Okay.
That works pretty good. Usually I'll just wait till the end and I'll use like a toothbrush. Run it over it a few times, that'll soften all the edges before I torch it, but then you'll end up with good products. So keep that.
Thank you.
So now that I'm done doing my gingival carvings here, I'm just gonna use a toothbrush, run it over all of the areas that I carved and bring down all those ridges. And get it pretty smooth before I use the heat to smooth it out. There's no real technique, that's just kind of going circular motions to smooth it all out.
How is the staining that you can find on like the final dentures done? Is that done after processing or how is that done?
Yeah, so the dentures fully processed, and then you would use a burr to remove about 1 millimeter of the ball on facial side. And then you just rebuild it off with like a composite one layer, one color at a time.
Okay.
So now that I've smoothed everything out with the toothbrush, I have to go right actually. Come on, break this a little bit. So then these carvings look pretty dramatic. They're a little bit more dramatic than I think Dr. Busateri would like to see on your guys' dentures, but they look pretty cool. And again, they're gonna be muted a little bit when you heat it up and then when you polish the denture at the end. As I torch the denture, I'm just gonna do it in light quick passes, not heating up a certain area too much at one time. Just going over a certain area, letting it cool down before I go back over it if I have to again. But do not heat up too long, and don't get the plate too close to it, you're just gonna remove all of your carvings that you've been. Alright, so now that everything's torched pretty smooth, I'm just gonna let it cool down. And then we're going to shine the wax. And shining the wax really doesn't have too much of a purpose. Other than if you were to be doing a try-in with your patient, making sure that the wax step looks pretty clean and professional, and make sure that they're pretty comfortable with how the final product is going to look. So it's really just to impress your patient and impress your faculty and show them that you care about your work. But shining the wax doesn't really serve a purpose in the way that like it won't affect the final products if it's shiny. It's just how it's. If at any point you're getting like a pinhole, like divot into the wax, just heat up and so just melt it together. Let's smooth it all out. This area here got melted a little too much at first, so I'm saying we'll clean it up. Trying to the access wax. So now for the shining of the wax, there's many different techniques that you can do. A lot of times people just recommend using some sort of nylon like pantyhose to shine it. And as long as your wax is pretty cool, like room temperature or colder, it's gonna shine pretty nice. If it's soft, you're not gonna get much of a shine at all, so it can see pretty cool. You could also use like soapy water to shine the wax, that works pretty good. But up in the lab, we made this little device on a mandrel that you can put in your handpiece. And
Slow speed.
Yeah, and the slow speed. It's just packing foam that we get around the denture teeth, so it's pretty soft foam. You can't just use it like any foam. It's gotta be pretty soft. And on the canopy seal, you want to use it on a slow speed, like 3,000 RPM. You guys can make these on your own. Everyone has the manual. It's like just the one with the screw in the top that you can put anything on. And we have like a bunch of packing foam up in the lab. You can come grab a piece and I can help you cut it and pop it on there. And this will make a big difference for the final result. I'll show you this. I don't know if I can do this on camera. Usually the
Wow.
space that boosts in the
Look at that.
house makes a pretty big difference.
Looks like you dipped it in acrylic.
Yeah. Fits inside the pallet, pretty nice, it's pretty round. And then your final product
Wow.
is nice and shiny. Your faculty is gonna think you care, your patient's gonna think you care, it looks great.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and you can tell now that we flamed it too, and we're finished the carvings and the root eminences aren't quite as dramatic as they looked when you carved it. So you want to keep that in mind, that it will soften quite a bit as you work through it, so make it a little bit more dramatic at the beginning.
Wow.
Yeah, totally. I think it's pretty soft right now, since it's flame, but this will be nice. Any more questions on there?
It is the same. I think it's the same.
Oh, just lots of thanks from everyone in the audience. Really, you reached a lot of people today and helped us so much. So thank you so much, Tyler.
Very welcome.
We'll have the demos up here for a bit, and in the last few minutes of the workshop, yeah, we'll be up here for Q&A, and thank you again for everything. This will be likely posted on Brightspace, and we'll figure out the kinks
Cool.
to that.
Don't forget, anyone can always stop by the removable out. It's from 224. We're always willing to answer some questions or just give you guys a little demo or just hang out.
They're awesome. Thank you so much, Tyler.
Yeah.
Wait, so how do you attach the one foam wax?
The one it's over there, yeah.
Feel free to take a model if you'd like. Would you like to practice? You can't practice on our projects
Why not?
because
What did that do? Basically just be doing it?
It was deemed on.
Yeah.
we can't have expert help on
Oh,
graded
Yeah,
projects.
since it's being
So
graded,
that's
I can
what
help
these
you
are
with that one,
for.
like, but I mean, you can watch the Zoom and do it along with it. But this mandrel, it's just the one with like the screw
Cool.
on the top of it,
Okay,
and you just stick the screw right through the layers.
so we have that, that one.
You guys should
Yeah,
have a bunch of
but
these.
we don't have foam like
We
that,
don't.
do we?
But like I said, I have a bunch of this in the lab. You can just come grab.